Welcome to GRE Snacks, snackable episodes about the GRE, GMAT, and graduate school admissions. I'm Tyler, founder of Achievable, and we have an affordable GRE course that includes everything you need to ace your GRE exam. A full textbook, videos on key topics, tons of GRE questions backed by a memory enhancing algorithm, a built in study planner and essay grader, and full length practice exams. You can try us out for free by going to achievable.me. Now, let's get started. Today we've got Shari Hubert with us, and Shari, I'd love if you can introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Tyler. I'm Shari Hubert. I am the Associate Dean of Admissions at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. I've been with Fuqua 8 years now, been in the higher ed space in admissions for about 13 years, and just love what I do. And so I'm really excited to be a part of your podcast, Tyler, and to share with you my views on the value of an MBA, graduate business education, as well as specifically how we support candidates and applicants.
Yeah, fantastic. And so today we're going to be talking just about the value of an MBA in 2026. And I think that the first thing I wanted to ask is really just how has the value of MBAs evolved in the last couple of years? Obviously, there's been a lot of big and important changes, particularly with AI being something that I think everybody's thinking about in the white collar working world. So yeah, I'm curious what how do you feel about the basically like how the value of an MBA is perceived by companies or just even by you guys at
Yeah.
Duke?
So, again, I have to say I am an evangelist for the value of an MBA. I received my MBA about 25 years ago at this point, but it's still yielding dividends for me. So for me, I'm a huge fan, and I think it's the kind of degree that never loses its value. But it has evolved from being primarily a credentialing agent to being a real-time leadership accelerator. Heading into 2026, people
Mhm.
want skills that you can apply immediately in strategic thinking, decision making under uncertainty, leading through change, and an MBA really provides those critical thinking skills for that. At Fuqua, that evolution shows up in how we integrate leadership, development, team-based learning, and real-world problem solving from day one, not just as an elective or add-on.
Mhm.
So for us, um, the value proposition is real. You get hands-on experience as soon as you get in the program, and then that value then continues to accelerate over time.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I think that there's definitely an argument to be made, right? That, AI is obviously going to have the biggest impact on entry level jobs first, where there was a lot of sort of like rote or repetitive work. But you could say that, the the higher up sort of the management food chain that you get, the more insulated you are from AI. Do you think that's true?
I think with AI, again, the way we view it is it's a tool, an important tool, but it's not going to replace judgment. It's not going to replace your ability to think critically, the ability to lead teams, to think about the ethics. And so you really still need those very traditional values that you gain from an MBA in order to really determine how best to leverage AI in any particular institution. So, businesses need graduates who understand the tool, but at the core, you still need to be able to leverage that tool in the appropriate way. And again, that is something that a human needs to do, not a tool itself.
For sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think really just kind of like everything else, like I'd like to compare AI to like when I was in eighth grade and the TI-83 graphing calculator had just come out. And my teachers were like, don't use it. You won't learn how to do math if you just use the calculator for everything. Well, now everybody uses a calculator all the time, but we still learn math. So I imagine that it's going to be like that, right? Like we're going to have,
Yeah, it
some things are going to go away. You're not going to have to do multiplication tables anymore, but you might need
Yeah,
still need
and
to do
if
other things.
anything, AI makes the MBA even more relevant. It can process data, but it can't replace, like I said, the judgment, the ethics, the leadership, teamwork. And we really, as people, we focus on developing leaders who know how to use these powerful tools responsibly and strategically. AI is integrated into
Mhm.
all of our core courses within your first year MBA. And so again, it's not an afterthought. It really is we're trying to figure out, like, for instance, with marketing, are the four fundamental pillars of marketing still true, or how does it change with this onslaught of AI? So again, it's really integrated into all the core classes as opposed to it just being kind of a side course.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that also what you're outlining a little bit is how the value proposition has changed, right? Because I think for organizations that are looking maybe to hire MBAs, I think part of what you're hoping to get is that strategic level thinking. And that's, it's hard to train that, I think, outside of something like an MBA program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say that an MBA is like a microcosm of the world. So especially at Fuqua, it's a very student-driven culture and environment. So we, introduce students to the opportunities to lead, peer leading, peer mentoring. They have the opportunity, for instance, our admissions fellows, they're the ones who interview our candidates coming in. So that's, a huge responsibility. You're helping to, pay it forward to the next generation of students who come into the program. We have career fellows who are second year MBA students who help the first year MBA students navigate the job search process. And so again, in really experiential, real ways, our students, over the 2 years have an opportunity to flex those leadership and organizational muscles in real meaningful ways before they get back out into the work world. And this is in addition to taking their
Yeah.
classes in the curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I mean, I think that as we head into 2026 and, onwards from here, I think that's going to become, more and more. And I think my next question then is to just ask you kind of with all these changes, what are the industries that you feel like are, putting the highest premium on MBAs right now, or where MBAs are going to make the have the most leverage in advancing your career? I would imagine, tech and finance are probably at the top of that list, but I'm curious what else
No,
is
you're absolutely
there.
right. I would say consulting, finance, and tech, they continue to place the highest premiums on MBAs because they need people who can connect the dots across functions. They need people who can lead teams in complex environments. And at FUCO, we see this reflected in our graduates and where they land, strong pipelines into consulting and finance, and then growing placements in tech. And of course, FUCO is well known for its health sector management program. So healthcare is another really strong area that we see a need for MBA or business talent. And I think the unique thing is employers come back and say, the value that they see is, of course, in the technical experience and toolkit that these students have, but also more so, it's really their ability to collaborate and to lead and to be on, part of a team. That's really, again, I think one of the higher value aspects, coming out of these types of programs, regardless of what sector or function you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I mean, I think that also these, you also listed, at least in my mind, a lot of organizations where the administrative challenges are getting harder, not easier. And that in a way, AI actually kind of puts administrators, or, for another way of putting it, might be middle managers, like directly in control of what's going on, and they're more hands on again. So that might be one of the reasons why.
Mm.
Well, and so I guess then my next question for you is around just, the general value of an MBA from the perspective that unfortunately I think is still probably the most important one, which is, the financial and career prospects of it, right? I'm curious if you know kind of how that's trending over the last couple of years, like, and essentially the dollar
Yeah.
value,
I
right?
mean, I think for top MBA programs, median base salaries are typically around the 175 to 185 with total compensation. That's including, any sign-on bonuses, often near 200,000, north of 200,000. So, so the monetary gains that can be had are substantial for individuals with an MBA relative to those without. At people, our graduates' outcomes align closely with that of national top tier schools as well. The real story is acceleration, I think, even more so than the salaries and compensation. The value that someone has is not just, the career that they have or the job that they get upon graduation, but it's their ability to accelerate over the life and the longevity of their career. Our alumni move into leadership roles faster because they've already practiced leading
Mm,
teams and making high stakes decisions during their MBA program. And it also, really, I think people can't underestimate the value of the ability to really pivot. And so again, this degree gives you optionality, I like to say, over the long-term career prospects, and not just what happens upon graduation. So for me, that really is it's part and parcel of the true value and the true ROI that I hope people look at, not just kind of what salary do I end up with, but the total package in terms of the return on investment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about that just because, I've spent time in the corporate world. What is it about an MBA program that makes you more equipped to make strategic decisions or like run a team than, just playing devil's advocate, like running that team for 2 years at your company
Well,
instead,
I think
right?
part of it.
What is it that leads to that
Yeah, I think
acceleration
part of it,
later?
the programs that stand out, they combine strong alumni networks, trusted employer relationships, deep experiential learning. So again, in an MBA program, a typical kind of top MBA program, you're going to use frameworks and you're going to use case studies based on your own actual experience, right? In many ways, you're learning from your peers, but in ways where you may not have
Mm,
experienced that particular situation, your peers have, and then the curriculum gives you a framework to be able to identify that issue or that problem in the future, right? And to give you tools to use to be able to address and find solutions that might happen the next time you encounter the situation, as opposed to you having to learn everything on the job or learn by mistakes. I mean, you still are making mistakes, but I'm just saying, like, these frameworks are really helpful to be able to give you a lens to make decisions and to solve problems that you may not have encountered in the past. Um, and so that's part
mhm.
of what makes it a little bit more impactful or effective for individuals coming out of these MBA programs. They have this lens around which they view problems, and they are able to leverage alumni networks, they're able to leverage relationships in ways that you may not have thought to do as an individual contributor, and not having had access to those particular networks, or not having had access to the thought leadership or the diversity of cases that you go through in a particular MBA program. It gives you a good sense for all the different kinds of issues and problems that an organization might encounter, that you can then use those frameworks and apply it in your organization the next time you encounter that, right? And so there's these frameworks that make it a bit more
Right.
efficient for you to make an impact in your organization.
Right. Well, and in that way, I think, you could make the argument that it helps eliminate organizational blind spots because you're learning from, multiple perspectives and case
Right.
studies and not just the work of the
That's right. Yeah,
organization.
that's right. Hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, the next thing I wanted to ask about was just, MBA programs today. I mean, you've talked a bit about how you guys at Duke have already integrated AI into all your classes. I'm sure that many other top programs would say the same thing. So, I feel like there isn't like an obvious standout MBA program in terms of, oh, this program is much better than the others at like preparing you for the future, teaching AI, even in this fast moving environment. I think you guys are all kind of on it. So, given that, what are the things that differentiate top MBA programs today? Not just Duke, but just kind of in
I
general.
mean, but that's what I was mentioning before. I think programs stand out, because of perhaps the type of alumni networks they have, or the kinds of relationships, employee relationships they have. So depending on, like I said, we are very strong in healthcare and climate and the environment. We have centers, which are organizations that combine faculty research, student engagement, and industry knowledge to help inform, provide thought leadership, but also help to inform students' learning and get them in doing things from an experiential perspective. There might be a differentiation in the types of experiential learning opportunities that might be at a particular school. For instance, at Fuqua, we have what we call the client consulting practicums, FCCP, and that really gives individuals the opportunity to work in teams and do real live consulting projects while they're in the program for credit, working with real organizations to solve real problems. So again, I think it's, you learn and or you teach kind of there's only certain ways to teach accounting or finance, but it's really those other aspects of an MBA program that really help to differentiate them. And that's and then, the last thing I would say that really probably differentiates programs is really the culture and the values. And so that's a
Hmm.
very personal, thing, depending on the candidates and the kinds of experiences they're looking for. Are they looking for, close knit, kind of collaborative environment? Are they looking for something that's a lot larger and maybe more dispersed and independently, kind of an individual contributor kind of a vibe to it? Those cultural and values that a particular school has also help to differentiate it. And I would tell applicants that the way to think about that is you have to think about first you have to think about what's important to you. What are you looking for in a program? And then take a look at these schools and determine how they match up to what you're interested in, what's important to you. But you can't necessarily fairly evaluate them unless you really know what you're looking for, right? First.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think on the culture topic, I'd love to just like you mentioned kind of, oh, these are these different kind of cultures that, people might be interested in. What types of cultural learnings are you thinking that are the most valuable right now within different MBA programs, right? Because I mean, just to put a finer point on it, I would kind of go into this assuming that learning collaboration would be better than learning how to be a good individual contributor. But, you tell
No, I
me.
mean, I don't necessarily think there's a right or a wrong, right? The culture is the culture, and it just depends on you, your personality, maybe you are someone who um, wants to do work. Maybe you're interested in doing work that is more independent. That maybe it's a culture that isn't as dependent on working in teams. There's school cultures that aren't that, or school cultures that are more lecture versus case method, more collaborative versus again more of an it's really about your own individual merits as opposed to your ability to work successfully on a team and deliver a project together. Like, some people, it might be based on the environment that they're in, smaller school, smaller college town feel versus being in the city, a large school, maybe city feel. All those things add to the culture and the environment and the experience that you're going to feel on a day-to-day basis. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's
Yeah.
really based on what's important to you.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I think, you know, I guess my question would be like, if you were looking at MBA programs today, what are the big pillars of what you would want to evaluate, right? Like beyond the U.S. News and World Report
Yeah, I
rankings.
I would probably look at the teaching methods. So, for instance, is it
Hmm.
case-based or is it lectures and combination? I would look at the strength of the alumni network. How broad is it? How responsive are the alumni? So have I tried to reach out to alumni and have they been really open and welcoming, in terms of being willing to speak to me about their experience? Same for students, like, right, how accessible are students before you apply to share their experiences? I would look at the types of companies, or industries that, students go into, maybe kind of the where they go geographically after graduation. Are they situated in certain, regions of the country or the world? And how does that stack up to where I want to be? Those kinds of things I think are important. I would look at the opportunities to engage in the program. Are there leadership opportunities, or is it just
Hmm.
an environment where people are only worried about the grades, or are they also concerned about engaging, contributing back in other kinds of ways that um, further develop the feel and the culture of the institution, um, and that also kind of helped me gain some leadership skill sets while I'm in the program. Uh, Again, I think that experiential learning, I think is really important. So you're not just learning things
Hmm.
that are theoretical, but you're also applying them in the program. So those kinds of things, what's the environment, the city? I would look at the city. Would I want to spend 1 or 2 years there? And it doesn't mean I need to, stay there for the
Hmm.
rest of my life, but would it be an environment that I'd be comfortable and have fun in, while I'm at least for the time that I'm in the
Right.
program? Those kinds of things I think are important. Do I feel like I'd be successful? Do I feel like I'd be supported, by my peers and classmates, or is it more of a cutthroat environment? Like again, I think it's going to be individual to every person, but I would look at those kinds of things more so than potentially the ranking of the school. Because on a day-to-day basis, and your ability to be successful both in the program and as an alum will be contingent on the individual surrounding you more so than what the
Hmm.
ranking of a school is.
Right. Yeah, the individual surrounding you and the
Yeah,
education you're getting vis-a-vis your goals, right? Which, as we talked about before, are going to be different for everybody.
that's right.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Well, do you have any kind of parting thoughts on the value of an MBA in 2026 as we wrap up
Yeah,
here?
we're seeing strong demand for MBA talent, like I mentioned, in climate tech, sustainability, digital health,
Hmm.
fintech. We actually have a fintech major concentration. We have, of course, AI-driven strategy roles, but we have a new program called the Master in Business Climate Sustainability degree. It's a 1 year master's degree, and it really trains students to translate technical innovation into scalable business models in the climate and sustainability space. And so, in short, employers need leaders who can pair, their domain knowledge with strategy and execution, and we feel like we're building programs that really help to develop those types of pipelines. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, and especially in these like emerging and maybe less commonly
yeah,
represented fields than finance and tech,
exactly,
right?
yeah. I think maybe one parting, piece of advice or words I would say is that an MBA in 2026 isn't about stepping out of the workforce; it's about stepping into leadership faster. The data supports it, employers value it, and it's schools like Fuqua and others where the experience is designed to be transformational and not just transactional.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, that is like almost like a tagline on its own, right? Just transformational, not transactional. I really like that. Well, thank you so
Great.
much. This has been GRE Snacks, hosted by Tyler from Achievable, with Shari Hubert from Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. And Achievable has a great online GRE course, which you can try out for free at achievable.me.
Thanks, Tyler.